Okay? We're now going to go on to another exercise, and this exercise is a little bit more complicated because this is going to allow me to go in and do what we call a lookup. Let's suppose we're going to go now to exercise 7 at the bottom, and I've got a series of my same patients that we've been working with all along. You see our friend Dr. Allen and so forth, and I've got my master list in columns P through Q. You'll notice a gap here. I've got some columns hidden just so that we don't overwhelm ourselves with data. But notice what I've got here. The user is going to be entering CPT codes, and I want to validate in this area that you see here against what you see in the red. Data validation. I click on data validation, and notice the source of my data is from P2 through P17, what you see on the left-hand side. It's only going to allow these CPT codes. It will not allow me to put in any code other than that. You have to remember that if you do decide to expand your data validation list, of course, you have to go in, update that, update your list, your master list, and then you have to go in and update the data validation. I didn't say this is without work, but I just said it involves minimal work. And when you consider the ability to increase the quality of data, I think you'll agree with me that it doesn't take a lot of work to update these. So I now click on my code. I go to my CPT code, and I now say I want to put in a CPT code for each one of these patients, and it's limiting me against what you see in column P. Excuse me. If I decide to put in 99999 as my CPT code, it's going to tell me the value that I've entered is not valid, that I've gotten some restrictions on it, and that, excuse me, and that we have to go in and check that and recalculate our CPT code. In a moment, we're going to be doing an example where the CPT code will be put in and the description will appear. But for now, I want to make sure that you understand that what we're doing here is we're putting in the CPT code and we're validating against the list. Remember that our friend, the list over here. The list, and our source is over in P2 through P17. My input message is input the CPT code, and my error alert is I'm stopping the patient. I could put a warning on if I wanted to. I'll just leave it as is. Very handy. All right, let's suppose we want to now look at the issue of whether patients have infections or they're expired. Let's go to exercise 8. We're going to go to exercise 8, and this is really a very simple, but yet it can be a bit complicated of a data validation technique. In this case, all I simply want to know about each patient is, did they have an infection or not? I don't want to know which infection it was. I don't want to know which drugs it was resistant against. I'm just simply capturing, did the patient have an infection during the course of their stay or not? That's the high level. I can get through my infection control database, I can dive deeper into the data. So what am I going to do here? Well, I'm going to validate the data. I go to column M. I validate the data. I click on my friend up here, data validation. I go to my settings. Allow any value. Boo, we do not like this. Allow any value. If I put any value in there, then it will allow me to put anything in there. So I want to say no, I don't want to allow any value. I want to access a list. And where is that list? That list is over here. I click on my source for that list is the red. I click on the red arrow and identify yes and no as my only allowable responses in column M. Notice that I have not selected cell P1. I do not want the infection, the word infection, to appear as one of my choices. That's simply my label. That's the label of my master table. So I'm going to allow yes and no to be the only allowable responses here. I'm then going to put an input message. Did the patient have an infection during the course of his or her stay? And now I'm going to put my error alert, and I'm going to put, if they don't respond, is yes or no, invalid entry. Try again. I then click OK. I now go over here. Notice it gives me a nice little prompt here. Did the patient have an infection during the course of his stay? I then go yes or no, and I can do whatever I'd like to do here. Again, remember that when I go here and I set up my input message and I typed, did the patient have an infection during the course of his or her stay, there really is no logical connection between what I'm putting there and what the category is. The Excel doesn't know that. In fact, I could put anything I want there. I could put in, let's go Mets, if I wanted to, and showing everybody my loyalty. And now look what happens. It says, let's go Mets. So, of course, we don't want to do that. We want to click on data validation. I'm going to clear that up. I'm going to go here. Instead of let's go Mets, I'm going to put in input yes, no. And then that's the message that the user is going to get. So remember, that's important to remember. Frequently, when users are setting up the input message, they believe that what they put in here has to have some sort of logical connection to what they're putting here. And in fact, it doesn't. It's just simply text that your user is going to see. Obviously, there should be some relationship between what you're putting in as the message and what the error alert is going to be. Okay, so you want to be sure that you do that. But there's no logical connection. I've seen people struggle with what they're going to put in the input message, and it's just simply words, as you saw from my little baseball commentary there. All right, let's now go on to exercise 9. Exercise 9, exactly the same as what we just saw in infection. I want to know if the patient expired. I don't want to know when they expired. I don't want to know what caused them to expire. I simply want to know, did the patient expire? Well, where is my master list? My master list, the source, is in columns P2 through P3. I should say cells P2 through P3. Yes, no are the only allowable answers. I'm going to put in the question, did the patient expire? And then I'm going to put in the error alert. And if I want to put in an error alert here, I can say wrong, try again. You can have a lot of fun with those error messages. You can give people all sorts of messages. So I've got a yes, I've got a no, and now I've got an XXX, and it says wrong, try again. You can have a lot of fun with that. We've received one question. So without data validation, you won't get the drop-down box. You can set up drop-down boxes in other ways, but with data validation, that would be the normal way of getting to get the drop-down box there. All right, now tighten your seatbelt, ladies and gentlemen. We're about to do something that combines the webinar, the drop-down with a lookup. This is exciting, and we're going to be using a topic here that I'm going to touch on today, and at our next webinar, I'm going to be going into in detail. We're going to be dealing with something called the Vlookup. And the Vlookup, yes, I can hear the groans coming already, the dreaded Vlookup. It's not as bad as you think. What the Vlookup allows us to do is to put in one value and to then have another value appear. So what I'm going to now do is I'm going to go into worksheet number 10, and you're going to see something very interesting here, okay? Don't let those NAs fool you. Don't let them upset you. Let me take a little bit of time to explain exactly what we're going to be doing here. What I'm doing is I'm setting up a data validation just as we normally have along the way. I'm going to set up so that my master list of codes, the allowable CPT codes, are going to be in column N, in cells N2 through N12. Those are going to be the only ones that I'm going to allow. But, and this is the big but, over here in column L, I'm going to have, we put in the CPT code for a cabbage vein single, I want the description cabbage vein single to appear over here. This is really exciting. It's a lot of fun. Once you get it, it stays with you, and it's one of those things in Excel that you wonder how you could have ever lived without it. As I said, I'm going to touch on it briefly today. In our next webinar, I'm going to be going into in detail.